Okay, guys, wrapping up day two of Pacific Audio Fest Seattle 2023. Just came back from a great dinner, went to Jazz Alley, and went to a concert featuring Judy Collins, who is 84 years old. Now, for 84 years old, it was an amazing concert. Yes, a little pitchy at the high notes, and she forgot words of certain songs, but I was bobbing my head, tapping my feet. That's the subliminal cues. You know you're enjoying something, and the food was great. Company was great. Val and his wife, and Steve McCormick was with us. It was a great night. Got to do a little bit of touring downtown in the car. Tonight was solstice. It was like 9:45, and it felt like dusk outside. You could see like blue sky basically. So it was a great night. Definitely memorable. And thanks to Val for setting that up tonight. But not all good for my report today. But I'm going to start with good because in terms of the stuff that was good, it was among the best of the best of some of the recent shows I've seen, even better than that. And I want to start with the two leading rooms for my best of. Well, let me start first with the first room I went into today, which was also right up there with the other rooms, and it was the Infigo with Stenheim. And this was the first time those two partnered. And like I've shown you before, Infigo's electronics, they've got the aesthetics down to a T. I love it. The performance, exceptional. Drives anything, Class A, tracking bias, keeps it cool, not a bunch of huge heat sinks for no reason. Purity. Also, you don't need a power conditioner with their amplifier. In fact, you don't want to use one with it. So it's great performance. Pretty pricey, but if you're in that cost no object budget, don't forget Infigo. That was great. And the pairing with Stenheim was phenomenal. They played one of my favorite reference tracks, And So It Goes by Jennifer Warnes. And if that's played correctly, it can be, tear jerking for a lot of people. It's such a good song, but it has to be done right because her long notes, the piano, they all have to be on point to get you to that level of enjoyment. I found with most systems. And what was very telling today is that system, even though the bass wasn't perfect because the room just wasn't treated, it was, I know if I could treat that room, that combination would be reference beyond something that people should consider that combination as A plus. Now, across the hall in the Modrite room, this is a good lesson for today. Modrite electronics, exceptional. Some of my friends own Modrite stuff, modified Modrite, Oppos as well. Dan Wright, one of the best in the industry. So on metrics of electronics, I think every bit as good as the Infigo guys. But they were pairing with a Revel speaker today, and they played the same exact track, the Jennifer Warnes track that I'd heard just previously across the hall. And it didn't nearly resonate with me at all. And it wasn't, I knew for a fact, it wasn't because of the electronics. That model of Revel just, I don't know. Revels in general are very good speakers, certainly on certain performance objective measurements. But when I hear them, certain ones in particular don't really, that's just a little bit of a hollow feel to the sound. And the bass is just a little bit weird. Maybe it's that front port. I don't know what it is. But that speaker is not one of my favorites from Revel at all, to be honest with you. And but this is a great point. A lot of times, like it or not, rooms get attributed to the speakers in the room. And that's because the speakers and how they mate with the room is basically what you're hearing. You're not hearing so much of those electronics. So if you go into the Modrite room across from the Infigo room, it's not those electronics. Dan Wright's electronics are phenomenal. What you probably are hearing is the Delta in the Stenheim versus the Revel. And so that's one of these important takeaways is that you want to be cognizant of these things. Yes, if you hear a difference, if something's not disappointing, try to figure out what it could be and not just attribute everything to everything in the room. Usually it is the speakers, how it's set up, and whatnot. And that's a good transition to what we're talking about next, which is after lunch. And I'll get to my best ones in a second, my two favorites. But let's transition to some of my disappointing rooms. I went to lunch, and I had pretty good rooms all the way up to lunch. In fact, one of my favorite rooms. But then after lunch, I went to a different wing, and it was just probably the worst string of rooms I've ever heard at a show, period. I'll always remember it for coming back from lunch, and I was like, did I do something to my ears? Like, nothing sounds good. And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was just the fact that room after room after room was just not there. And one of the things, piggyback on what I said about setup, is that it was even speakers I know well that weren't sounding good, like the source points. They were in a room with, I think it was called Just Audio, and one was pointed at my ear, the other one was pointed down the hallway. It wasn't set up really that good. It was playing Sansui, an old vintage Sansui piece was driving it. Obviously, there are other factors like the noise floor in the room. People were talking, all that kind of stuff. I try to discount that, but it wasn't doing it for me. And then there was a speaker that was up against the windows, using the windows, I guess, as part of the baffle. Just didn't do it for me. And then another room, and another room, and another room. It was kind of crazy. And even Steve McCormick came to meet me, and I was like, he got to hear one of the last rooms that we went into, but like, let's break the string, let's go listen to Kabas, because he hadn't heard the Kabas yet. So we went into the Kabas room, and even that sounded bad. And because I was not in the sweet spot, Steve was in the sweet spot. He requested a song, and I was a few back up against the back wall, and I was hearing the bass, which just, this doesn't sound right. I was applauding the bass just a day ago. It was like one of the best basses in the room. Like, what's going on? Is it just because I'm up against the wall? Am I in a note or something? But it was so drastic of a difference that I was like, something's wrong. But anyway, Steve started talking to him because he noticed it immediately too, and started asking about the app and the controls that are in effect and what DSP they were using. And as soon as I saw where he was using the loudness button, as Steve was asking him to increase the volume, he still had that loudness button on, which was for lower volumes. Now, it does supposed to have adaptive loudness and change that, but it brings up a point. If you're a longtime subscriber and you know DSP, you've heard me say this a million times. Never add with DSP as a whole, especially if you're adding in a whole range of bass. Loudness buttons are a terrible idea. Yes, I get the point of why when you listen at low volume, you want to boost that area, but just turn up the volume, guys. Stop listening at that level if you want to hear bass. Don't try to EQ, boost bass, and then when you turn up the volume, you've got this huge boost. And even with adaptive, it's not going to cure it, and that was causing a problem for sure. So again, this also shows EQ and DSP can ruin things just as much as it can improve things. So it's all in the implementation and learning how to use it properly, because in this case, it totally didn't work. But that's the great thing about the Kabas, is that I was able to diagnose what I was hearing. I didn't just knee-jerk run out and say, oh, it's terrible. All of a sudden it's not a good speaker anymore. No, you diagnose what could have gone wrong, what could have changed. And that's what you want to start doing at these shows. Diagnose what could be causing it not to sound good. Because usually all this gear is good. I mean, it just, a lot of times it is setup, source point setup, noise floor in the room, the song they're playing, volume. I've talked about this before. But getting back on track with great sounding rooms, Akora before lunch, man, I've heard them a million times in different rooms, but I would say probably the most memorable thing I've ever heard on the Akora was today, because it was in a room, first of all, that you can envision them being in your home. And that's what was a takeaway different. They usually will take on any challenges, put them in any room, and they sound great. But today I was able to envision them in a large family room style size room, and they were playing a track that I know very well, St. James Infirmary. Again, longtime subscribers will know I use this as a reference track. And they were using it on streaming, which is not as good as vinyl, which I normally hear it. However, what you heard in that room was probably Ratchet played at big time dBs, and that was super impressive. And that's what a lot of people that watching that video probably will gravitate to, and certainly everybody in the room was like dynamic, perfect, just effortless and cool. but the shimmer of the symbols at the end of St. James Infirmary is what was the real takeaway for me today. That is rare to hear, that level of decay and shimmer. That was perfect tone. With that on the streaming version, that was a litmus test to me today to show that that VRC one, it's not just one that can jam out with the best of them. It can. It showed that today with Ratchet, but he showed also in that very short window of time that it's his nuanced finesse speaker, beautiful tonality. If you got cost no object budget, that is a speaker that should fill the bill no matter where you stand on that taste profile. So that's in my early running for best of show. Another one that is in my running for best of show, and it's no surprise, Jeff Joseph. He's got an end of the hall room, so the noise floor is good. He sets up speakers impeccably every time. He's got a proven design that hasn't had to have Mark II, Mark III, Mark 10, 20, or new models to update every year. That Pearl has stood the test of time with just implementing some tweaks, minor tweaks here and there, and using technology like graphene now. But he had a tape source that was impeccable. Yeah, I even showed on video, he showed where people are still recording onto tape and selling it. It was a great track, great tape he was playing. And just for a further anecdotal support, Steve McCormick said he went into that room after I did, separate from me, and he agreed it was one of the best rooms, his favorite room thus far. Did the Genesis room a second time, that prototype speaker. I haven't really spent time with the Genesis in the sweet spot, the bigger ones yet, but that prototype sounded good. So it wasn't all bad, but there was a period today where I was like, what the hell was going on? So memorable in the not so great sense, but on the flip side, super memorable, super high quality rooms. There's another room that was great today, Odyssey. But I didn't upload the video because it's the one video. I rarely never edit videos. Guys, I just upload as soon as I come on. I have to edit this one because it was so long. I was in the room, and Klaus, what a character. He wanted to bring his dog in, and his dog is named Rainer, I think. And this was the first time having a woofer in the room, a true woofer, compared to a speaker woofer. And so I've got to curate that video. It's just too long, but it played again at, like I showcased at Expona, the way he sets up these small rooms. He's a master at these hotel rooms, getting the most out of it, getting imaging that's very layered and surrounding, and keeping that tonality good. That's his strength for sure. And this time he was showing with all symphonic line, none of his Odyssey electronics. So that was something that I hadn't seen before. At least his room's so dark. How do you know anymore? That's all you see is candles. So that's another thing I'm gonna edit that video, but stay on the lookout for that. It's a great room. If you haven't checked it out and you're in this area, make sure you check out his room. He's quite a character, good guy, and knows how to set up a room. All right, I'm probably leaving some things out, but I'm doing this off the cuff, guys. It's late at night. I'll have a final wrap up for sure that's a little more comprehensive. But hopefully you enjoyed the coverage. Stay tuned, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon.